Imagine a place where you can find every comp in set 14, always updated and ranked from the strongest to the weakest. Sounds too good to be true, right? Well, I made it happen. I'm Frobe, I've hit Challenger multiple times and played in high-stake tournaments. I spent the last few days testing, analyzing and putting together all the playable comps in set 14, and I'm here to share them with you. I spent a fair amount of time building this spreadsheet with all 30 comps. Of course, I'll keep it updated daily, and once the meta settles, I'll turn it into a tier list so you know exactly what's OP. This is especially important because I'm making this video during set 14 PBE, and there will be champion reworks, meta shifts, and balance thrashes, so if you're watching this video later in this set, you may find that many comps have changed, been modified, and now you understand why. Alright, let's jump in. Let's start with the first comp that seems to me a comp that will be quite popular, especially towards the beginners. It's Nitro Reroll. So Nitro is a synergy that allows you to summon a robot that can turn into a T-Hex. And the more 3-star Nitro units you have on the board, the quicker you will strengthen your robot and the quicker it will become a T-Hex. This is especially powerful if you manage to have quickly Kindred 3 and Nidalee 3 that can give a lot of power to your robot. And I think this comp is really fun to play, that's why I believe this is going to be one of the most popular. So in this version you really want to play with Kindred as your main carry, so you want her to have Infinity Edge and potentially some mana with Shojin, or you can build full AD, it doesn't really matter. The most important part is that you use your item as fast as possible, otherwise if you keep your items too long, you will simply lose the fights that you could have won with suboptimal items and you will lose the game. So you will reroll at level 5, once you find your 3-star units, you might even want to reroll Shyvana and Jhin, especially if you have an augment like Starry Night. Otherwise, if you cannot do that, it's fine because it doesn't mean that you have to do. The most important part is to reach the very late game board with those 5-cost units such as Zac, Garen, but also Sejuani, a 4-cost unit that will be extremely important in your team to bring stability in the late game. So I'm showing a little bit the augments here because we are going to talk about the 1-cost reroll for quite some time for the next comps. Augments like Starry Night or investment strategies or no scout, no pivot are really good for this kind of comp. You can also look for prismatic tickets. They will help you have more chance to find your 3-star units or to find them faster, which will allow you then to be stronger faster. That's why they are really good augments. But don't forget also you need some combat augments such as Pumping Up, Glass Cannon and such things. For the second comp, we're still going to use Nitro, but this time we're going to focus on Nidalee and her synergy AMP. So same, you will want to reroll at level 5 because this is also a 1-cost reroll comp. You want to make sure you have Nidalee 3 and you will reroll Kindred 3, not necessarily because she has a lot of damage, especially that you don't have items for her, but simply because she will help you stack your robot a little bit fast. Once you have Nidalee 3, and this is the trickiest part, you need to stay at level 6 a little bit longer because you also need to reroll Naafiri and Jhin potentially. Again, if you have items for Jhin, yeah, for sure, play Jhin 3. If you don't have items for him, you can skip it. But most importantly, you need to have Naafiri 3 and Nidalee 3 because these two are AMP and they'll be both very dependent on each other. If you have only one, you will see that your board will lose a lot of power in the late game. And once you have Naafiri 3 and Nidalee 3, then you can push your level and try to aim for that very late game comp where you're going to put all the AMP units, and also you will start to look for late game units such as Sejuani and Samira who will help you manage to stabilize your board for the very late game and make you win. Again, if we look at the augments, you will find out that no scout, no pivot is still very good, and actually we are going to add too much value because you're rerolling a little bit 2-cost units such as Naafiri and Jhin. Of course, here since you're playing melee champions, the item Titan's Resolve is insanely good, so Gargantuan Resolve makes it even better. Alright, still with the 1-cost reroll, this time we're going to talk about another 1-cost reroll that I think will be quite popular, is Shaco. So Shaco has the ability to stack infinitely his AD every time he kills a unit. So the idea about Shaco is to make sure that during the early mid game he manages to kill a few times, and once you have Shaco 3 stars, he will rack up a lot of kills and he will get a lot of damage. So The way you want to play Shaco, of course, is to use Syndicate, because the Syndicate ability allows Shaco to teleport and target weakest units in range. And this is really useful as you want him to kill units so he can get more stacks and get stronger. You will reroll at level 5 by adding relevant synergies such as Slayer, Syndicate, Vanguard, and Bruiser. Once you have Shaco level 3, you will push your levels and try to add more and more relevant units and cap your late game. So your very late game revolves around 4 Divinity Corp, which allows to have many good stats on the whole team. You will want to have 4 Slayers, because obviously Shaco is a Slayer, so you want to make sure you're playing Slayer. You will add also a secondary carrier such as Zed, who basically has the same stuff as Shaco. And of course, if you manage to get it, you will want to have a good Renekton with Breezer items, and also, why not, even Shroud to allow to have a little bit of AD shred. For the augments, just like the others, you will want to have no scarp, no pivot. You will want to have reroll augments, and you will also look for stuff such as Not Today, allowing to have Edge of Night and relevant items for Shaco. Alright, now let's go with some AP units in 1 cost. Let's talk about Techie reroll. So in the Techie tree, you have 2 1 cost carries, which are Zyra and Seraphine. And honestly, at this moment, it's a little bit hard to tell which one is the best. I would say that depending on the meta, depending on how they balance the game, Zyra might be stronger or Seraphine might be stronger, and based on that, you will prioritize items on one of her. So Techie is a simple synergy that gives a lot of AP damage. Also, it allows to debuff a little bit the damage of your opponent, so it has some kind of utility, and this is actually quite nice. We're going to use that. For this reason, we're going to reroll Zyra and Seraphine and Mundo. So if you play the Zyra version, you will try to add 3 Street Demon, allowing her to have a little bit more impact in the game. And that's why you will reroll as well Mundo, because this is the 1 cost tank of Street Demon. Once you have Mundo 3, Zyra 3, Seraphine 3, at level 5, you can start to push your level and try to get Techie units in the late game. So if you don't have an emblem, you will only stay at 6 Techie, because it's a little bit expensive if you are trying to put 8 Techie without an emblem, because you will have to sacrifice good late game units such as Garen and Severani to add worthless Techies, let's say. But if you have an emblem, it's actually great. I can recommend you to play the 8 Techies. In that case, you will simply remove Garen and you will add Fiddlesticks to have the 8 Techies that gives a lot more power, and the debuff is even stronger. Once again, here, if you want to play this comp, look for Starry Night and stuff like that. I would suggest that no scarp, no pivot is not that great, because you already have a lot of offensive power, so you don't need to have more. Instead, an augment that I really like is Cognitive Implant, because this is a stacking augment allowing you to have a lot of damage in the very late game, because you have stacked so much AP the whole game. And finally, the last 1 cost reroll I'm going to present you, though I'm going to present you a little bit more later with the hero augment, but let's say like for the standard 1 cost reroll comp, I want to present you Kog'Maw. So Kog'Maw is a simple unit, he just attacks. And that's pretty much it, he just attacks. And because he just attacks, his best items are Ginzu and Runan. You will see in the stats, in case you really want to see the stats. These are the best items for Kog'Maw, and also it allows Kog'Maw to proc the Boombot damage even faster thanks to the Runan. So based on that, you want to reroll Kog'Maw at level 5. The only tricky part is that Kog'Maw is the only 1 cost unit you want to reroll in the game. So you will also potentially want to reroll at level 6 just to have a little bit more frontline with Skarner 3 and Darius 3. Once you have that at level 6, you can push your level and add a lot more good units such as Cho'Gath and Fiddlesticks to have 4 Boombots. Then after you will add Garen Zac. It's always the best legendary you can add in the late game in case you don't really know what to add. And that's pretty much it. This time, no scarp, no pivot is extremely good because it allows Kog'Maw to have much more offensive stats. Pumping up, definitely good. And Starry Night, one of the best, as you want to reroll 1 cost and 2 cost units, so this is definitely good. And probably the most broken augment to make this comp S tier, I would say, is category 5, enhancing the power of your Runan. And I told you earlier how Runan was good already. Alright, now let's start the 2 cost reroll comps with Vigor. So Vigor is a unit that you really want to have 3 stars as fast as possible, because he will deal much more damage other units as long as they are not 3 stars as well. This is a unit that requires you to have Cyber Burst. Cyber Burst allows Veigar to deal a little bit more damage and transform with his once target type of spell into a small AoE, so it definitely increases his damage. Since it's a 2 cost, you will want to reroll 2 cost frontline as well, and the best ones are obviously Shyvana because it's a Bastion and Teki, so allows to activate Teki on Veigar, but also Illaoi, who's an excellent tank for a 2 cost that is also Bastion. Once you have this comp at level 6, you will reroll all these 3 units. Once you have your 3 stars, you will obviously try to aim for more and more units. The best version is to play 6 Bastion with 4 Cyber Boss, like in this version, that however requires you to have Kobuko in the very late game. But Bastion is such a good, reliable frontline type of trait. Now let's talk about the augment. So probably the best augment to play this comp is to have Cognitive Implant, allowing Veigar to stack a lot of AP and become stronger and stronger as the game advances. You can also get some Bastion emblem, which are nice, but probably like Axiom Arc or Blue Battery are one of the best. These are kind of difficult to get because these are black market augments, but definitely making Veigar much stronger. And then after, you can also look for other great combat augments such as No Scoon No Pivot, New High Score, Lifelong Learning, etc, etc. Alright, if we keep talking about the 2 cost reroll comps, definitely you want to talk about strategies with Echo and LeBlanc. These are very powerful units, they go well together, and of course they have very good synergies to even cap during the late game. So one of the things you really want to play with this comp is ideally play with Cypher during the early game. So Cypher is the fortune trait that requires you to lose the fight on purpose, and the more you lose, the more intel you gather and the better the rewards you will get. However, since you're playing a reroll comp around 2 costs, you will not try to cash out Cypher at stage 4 or something like that. Instead, you'll try to cash out at stage 3-3 or 3-7 because this allows you to have extra resources and have a better power spike around your 2-star Echo and 2-star LeBlanc. So at level 6 you will reroll like this comp and you will aim for Echo 3 and LeBlanc 3, and even if you have a luxury you can even try Rast 3. But this is not that relevant anyway. The most important are of course Echo and LeBlanc. Once you have them at 3 stars, you will obviously try to push and get your late game comp. One thing you have to notice though is like during the late game comp, it's actually worth to remove Cypher as they no longer bring much value to your board, just a little bit of stats on LeBlanc, but that's it. You will remove them in order to have better units and better synergies. Obviously, you will going to play Vinicorp with Renekton and Sejuani. This is the typical late game Bastion. You will want to splash in almost every comp. Renekton, Sejuani, extremely powerful. You will add, obviously, Nico because she is definitely a strategist that you want to play. You will add more strategists with Yumi, and you will add Samira to proc the Street Demon and AMP at the same time. Even though it's not that important to have AMP on her, but you know, like she brings a lot of synergies, and at the same time you can always give her some stuff like I don't know, IE and stuff like that, and she will do her job. And one of the most important things you really want to have in any strategist comp is Garen, as Garen can give you the strategist mod you can give to literally anyone. So you can give that, for instance, to Renekton, he will become much tankier, or you can give that to Sejuani, or you can give that to Samira. You understand what I mean? It's just like the strategist mod is one of the most broken ones. Now let's talk about Graves and Executioner. So Graves is a very non-typical type of carry. He doesn't have mana, and he will cast, or rather attack more often every 2 attacks. So Graves has the capacity to be extremely mobile and destroy units with some kind of burst whenever he attacks twice, and that's why you really want to play him with Executioners, giving him a lot more power. So you will reroll at level 6. As you can see, you don't have a lot of 2 cost units, you have a lot of 3 cost units, so you better have a lot of economy during stage 3 in order to find these units, and you will play with 3 Executioners and of course Golden Ox, allowing him to have more damage. You will try also to optimize Golden Ox a little bit, meaning that when you reroll, you will try always to get to the next level of Golden Ox to give a little bit more damage to Graves. So be careful with that. you have to play with your economy a little bit better if you really want to optimize your synergies. Once you have Grace 3, you will push your level and you will try as fast as you can to get 5 executioners, because the 5 piece gives a lot of durability, allowing Graves to be even more tankier. Your side carry for the late game is going to be Vex, Vex being one of the best focus carry AP, especially if you play with Executioner. Basically, she's an Executioner, so there's no one else who can do that. And if you're lucky, you may have Urgot quite early, allowing him to basically farm some components and sometimes goals as well, so making your comp even stronger by simply having more items. As for the augments, if you're very lucky, you may have Worth the Weight with Graves inside. In that case, your game is really easy to play, but if you don't have that, it's fine. You can play with Cooking Pot, allowing you to stack a lot of HP and craft the Executioner emblem. You can also have the Executioner emblem, allowing you to have 5 Executioners before finding Urgot. Alright, now let's talk about Vayne reroll. So Vayne is a little bit difficult potentially for people who like to theory craft. She's not that intuitive. The best items that you want on her is Ginzu and Runan, simply because her spell allows her to stack Ginzu and proc the Runan 3 times, meaning that she actually attacks quite fast, and everything that has some kind of on-hit effect, such as Ginzu or Runan, is just amplified. This is why you will want to play at level 6 with 4 Vanguard, and even if you have only 3 Slayers, it's a little bit weird. It doesn't really matter because you need to have a good front line. You will reroll Vayne, Ras, and Skarna at the same time. Once you have your 3 stars, you will start to push your level. If you're level 8 without any legendaries, you just simply play 6 Vanguards and Vayne, and that's pretty much it. Very straightforward. But obviously, this is not enough if you want to win the very late game fights. In that case, try to keep your resources to push level 9 and add legendaries such as Garen, Zac, and Aurora, so you can have 4 Vanguard, 3 Anima Squad, 2 Slayers, and 2 strong legendaries to help you win your late game board. As for the augments, since we're playing 2 cost rerolls, Too Much Value is one of the best, allowing you to have a lot of free rolls. Category 5 also being one of the best augments you could ever have in this comp. And then after, I would kind of say typical type of augments, Anger Issue, Investment Strategy, Pumping Up. These are very good combat augments. Alright, next one is Jhin rerolls. Jhin definitely one of the champion that most people will enjoy playing simply because he has too much carries. But anyway, if we talk about Jhin in this set, he's a 2 cost and you will want to play around Jhin, Illaoi, and Shyvana. Basically, you want to play around Bastion. Obviously, you already saw earlier how to play Jhin as a side carry with Nidalee or Kindred, but here we want him to be the primary damage dealer. I would say that since you play Jhin, he's an exotech, you will have a lot of different exotech items. I would suggest you to play Jhin only if the first exotech item you get is one that is tailored for Jhin. For instance, we have the Pulse Silencer that allows Jhin to execute and also critically strike. So when you have this, you no longer need to build an Infinity Edge and you simply focus on having tons of damage, for instance with Deathblade and Guardbreaker. Once you reward this comp and you have 3-star frontline and Jhin 3, you will push your level and you will play 6 Bastion with a lot of powerful units such as Aurora, obviously Renekton because he's a Bastion, and Xayah as a marksman to have a little bit more damage on the Jhin side. Of course, you can also stuff Xayah if you have enough resources. You will want to play this comp with Too Much Value or Starry Night, allowing you to have quickly a lot of 3 stars. But don't forget that you may also want to have some combat augments or item augments such as Big Grab Bag, Mace's Wheel, or Glass Cannon. And finally, for the last 2 courses, reroll comp that we're going to talk today, without talking about the hero augments, of course, is Twisted Fate reroll with Darius. The buff of Syndicate on Twisted Fate allow him to have a lot more damage with the 3rd card, which has different effects. And some of them are great as it can give you a little bit of gold, and some other effects basically deals more damage. And without Syndicate, honestly, TF is not a real carry, so you really need to have Syndicate and put the hat on him. You will reroll at level 6, like usual. You will mostly reroll Twisted Fate and Darius. You can also reroll Ras 3 if you can, but I can guess that many people will play Ras, so it will be a little bit hard. And Twisted Fate is a non-typical type of AP carry because the more he attacks, the more AP he gets, and then the more damage he deals. This is why his best stuff is probably double Ginzu and Gunblade. Once you have Twisted Fate 3 and Darius 3, you will push your level and you will add a lot of relevant synergies and units. As you can see on the trade side, you have a lot of trades. You have Exotech, Syndicate, Divinicore, Vanguard, Bastion, Bruiser, Techie, Rapid Fire. You have a lot of different traits simply because they all fit together quite well and you have a decent front line and a good amount of damage. You will use Zeri as your late game secondary carry, who also tend to like having attack speed and AD, and this way you have the power of basically outscaling almost everyone in the late game. Of course, as long as your front line lasts long enough. Alright, now let's talk about Rengar, and we start with the 3-cost reroll comps with Rengar. So Rengar is an executioner, kinda similar to Graves of course, but this time you will want to reroll at level 7. And since you're level 7 and you play some 3-star 3-cost units, you will want also to reroll for Varus. So I would say that you have to be careful about your Exotech item. If you have a good Exotech item such as the Hollow Bow for Varus, then Varus is 100% your secondary carry. If, however, you don't have a good Exotech item for Varus, but something like Tankiness for Sejuani, then you will mostly play Vex as your secondary carry. That's pretty much the subtlety of the comp, and that's it. So once you have your Rengar 3, you will push your level. You will play 5 Executioners. As I said earlier for Graves, the 5 Executioner is great trait to get as it gives a lot of durability to your Rengar. And of course, you will play strategies with Nico and Echo as it gives a free Street Demon and free stats basically. For the augments, since we're playing 3-cost reroll comp, Rig Chop is one of the best, allowing you to have a lot of 3-cost units. Don't underestimate Harry Grab Bag. Some people might say that this is not a good augment. I would say that this is a good augment to have your Rengar 3 quite early and apply pressure so you can have the time to push level 9 and find your Urgot. Trifecta is really nice as you play 3-cost reroll, Gargantuan Resolve as well, Executioners, Crown and stuff, allowing you to have 5 exec faster and stuff like that. All right, let's talk about Elise. So the problem with Elise is like she's a Nitro and you want to play Nitro, of course, to stack your dinosaur. But the issue is that she's the only 3-cost unit of the Nitro tree. So it means that it's hard to roll for other stuff at the same time. But let's talk about how you reroll at level 7. So one of the trickiest parts I would say to play this comp is that you really want to reroll 2 costs and 3 costs at the same time. And because of that, your tempo is a little bit different from a typical 2-cost reroll comp or typical 3-cost reroll comp. So you will still reroll level 7 and you will try to achieve this comp with Elise, Jean and Shyvana at 3 stars. You will try to, while you roll for Elise, you will try to roll for Shyvana and Jean. It doesn't mean that you will find them necessarily all the time, as you have lower chances to find them at level 7 rather than level 6. But since you're level 7, you have higher chances to find Sejuani and stabilizing your board quite hard with 4 Bastion, 3 Nitro, and Dynamo and Sejuani. Once you found Elise 3, and let's say that you find Shyvana 3 or Jean 3, or you're too far from them so you give it up, you decide to push your level and you will play 4 Bastion, 3 Dynamo, and you will add late game units such as Renekton, Garen, and Aurora being the best Dynamo unit you can add in the very late game. Since you're playing a comp that requires you to roll at different levels, I would suggest that augments such as Prismatic Ticket, Rig Shop, or Hairy Grab Bag are extremely important as they significantly help you find your 3-cost and 3-star units. On the other hand, if you look for very strong, powerful, and relevant augments, you will look for Axiomark, Blue Battery, Dynamo Circlet, All That Shimmers, Blazing Soul. These are very, very good combat augments that you will want to play. Now let's talk about Jinx. So Jinx is a little bit similar to Vayne, as I presented earlier, as her spell allows her to proc a lot the on-hit effect of Renan, for instance. So this is why you really want to have at least 1 Renan on her. That's the best item she can have. You can have 2, it's definitely good. You can also argue that you will want to have a Ginzu instead of Spear of Shojin, But I would say that since you're going to use bows in order to have Runan, it's actually better to have 2 Runan and 0 Ginzu rather than 1 Ginzu and 1 Runan. Of course, this can change in the future depending on how she is balanced, how they are going to adjust a kit. But anyway, you will want to reroll at level 7. You will of course want to put 3 Street Demon. You will play around strategies. Strategies is really easy to add since you have Nico and Echo who are both Street Demon. You will add Marksman and you will add a little bit more frontline with Vanguard and Anima Squad. Once you have your Jinx 3, you will push your level and you will aim for a secondary carry who is going to be Xayah. Of course, you will add late game units. Like I said many times already, you have your Sejuani, Renekton that goes well together. You have Leona and Sylas that goes well together with Xayah. And you add Garen who can give strategies or any relevant mod for your team. For instance, if you can have a strategist mod on Jinx, this is going to be very, very strong on her. Obviously, this is a 3-cost reroll comp, so you will want to have Rigged Shop, you will want to have Category 5 as I said earlier, you will want to have Harry Grab Bag to have more chances to find Jinx, and that's pretty much it. Alright, Yuumi, probably the most hated champion ever on TFT, but actually this one doesn't feel that toxic compared to the previous Yuumi we had in the past. So Yuumi is a strategist, AMP, and Anima Squad. You will want to go deep into the strategist tree, and of course you will want also to have some AMP, allowing her to have a lot more mana. You will reroll at level 7 with 7 strategists, and you will obviously add Street Demon in order to have a little bit more power on the field. Once you have your Yuumi 3, you will aim to push your level and add very late game units. So of course you have your Garen, you have your Zac. Here it says 6 strategists, but it's a little bit of a bug. The strategist mode doesn't give one more strategist. Then of course you will try to add Samira to have one more AMP. The second you have strategists on Zac, you will put all your defensive items on him because he's going to be a much better tank than Nico. And as I said earlier, this is very similar to Elise. Blue Battery or Action Mark are kind of broken on Yuumi. You will also look for Harry Grab Bag or Rigged Shop and stuff like that in order to have better chances to find Yuumi 3. But don't forget also you have great augments such as 10,000 IQ, your Transference and Overclocked. That gives a little bit more power to your team. Alright, let's talk about Fiddlestick reroll. Honestly, this was probably the comp that I liked the most during PB, but I can see that it gets nerfed easily as it was a little bit too strong. So the way you want to play Fiddlestick reroll is without Sticky, but rather with a lot of frontline. So that's why you will use Bruisers. And honestly, if you can have Bruiser emblem on Fiddlesticks, I would put it immediately. But you can also play with 6 Boombot if you have an emblem. So the way you want to play it is to reroll Fiddlestick at level 7. You will want to reroll, of course, Mordekaiser as well, because it's another 3-cost Bruiser that you will want to play, and he's sticky as well. Once you have this comp at level 7, you will push your level and you will add a lot of late game units such as Urgot and Kobuko, and of course you will want to make sure you have Cho'Gath. There's another version that you can play as well, especially if you have an early game with Cypher, is to reroll Draven with Fiddlesticks, and you will play Galio and you will play Renekton, and you will have Vi as well to complete the Cypher. And in the very, very late game, you can consider removing Vi in order to remove Cypher, just to have a better late game unit. When that happens, you will want to cash out at around stage 4 in order to have more resources, and you will reroll Draven, Fiddlesticks, and Mordekaiser. For this comp, you will also look for stuff like Rigged Shop. Since you play a lot of 3-cost unit, you will want to have Trifecta, and you will want to have Cooking Pot in order to build your Bruiser emblem, or you can simply take a Bruiser emblem directly from an augment, or a Boombot crown, Boombot's crest, Boombot circlet, which are extremely powerful because they allow you to have 6 Boombot in the very late game. Alright, now let's talk about the focus and how we commonly say the fast 8 comps that you really want to play if you don't want to reroll any comp and don't play any 3-star units. So the first one I'm going to present you is one that I believe requires a Divinity Corp emblem if you truly want to have a great late game comp. Without it, at the state of the moment I'm making the video, this comp is not that good. But in the future again, if the balance changes quite a lot, if Zed is getting much better, then this can definitely be one of the strongest comp in one of the meta. So the way you want to play this comp is to have 7 Divinity Corp that allows to have tons of stats on all your units, and especially the Divinity Corps as they double the amount of stats they get. So this is why having an emblem on Zed is basically putting Zed under steroids. And with that, you can actually have Zed as being one of your best carry. Of course, you will need a secondary carry, and this is going to be Vex, as she is much more reliable than Zed in terms of consistent damage on one single target unit, while Zed will do a lot of damage, but will not necessarily always target the same units and kill them. They both go well together, and obviously, if you have the opportunity, you will want to stuff your Renekton or Urgot or both in the very late game to have a lot more damage and win the game. If you don't have an emblem, I would suggest to put an Edge of Night instead of Divinity Corp emblem on Zed. But again, I do expect this comp without an emblem being kind of very underwhelming compared to other comp. If you play focused comp like this one, of course you can have some augment that gives you a little bit of gold or a little bit of XP. But let's say that apart from this comp, I'm not going to put them everywhere on every guide. I would suggest you to focus on these comps, which on these augments like Divinity Corp or Divine Ascension or Mace's Will, the Golemify, as the Golem will also get stats from the Divinity Corp. That's why this is really fun to play, and I'm the carry now as well. We get some stats. Distant Lotus and stuff like that are always very strong and stable augments you want to have in your comp. Okay, now let's talk about Golden Ox. So the Golden Ox is a very weird trade, and especially if you're a beginner, you might be confused on how it works. But the most important part that you need to understand is that every turn you need to spend your gold smartly in order to reach the next threshold of the Golden Ox tree, so you can get a little bit more damage on everyone, and this is going to be permanent for the whole game. So this is why you want to be very smart in managing your economy and pushing or rerolling just the good amount of time in order to just reach the threshold. And you can reach only one threshold per turn, so you cannot just like spend all your gold in one turn and get multiple levels of Golden Ox in the same turn. So that's why you have to plan carefully and stuff like that. So the way you want to play this comp, obviously, is to play with your focus and 5-cost carry, which are Aphelios and Annie. These two units are really powerful by themselves, and you will want to also add a few synergies that go well together. So you have Xayah that will give Marksman and Anima Squad, you have Yumi that will give AMP and Anima Squad, and you have Leona who will give Vanguard and Anima Squad. This is why this comp is really good together. It would be even better if you can have Golden Ox emblem. In that case, you can remove Graves in order to have something like Mordekaiser that will give Bruiser and Teki. One of the biggest pro of this comp is that you can farm a lot of gold thanks to Golden Ox. As you know, when Golden Ox units kill other units, they have a high chance to get some gold, and also you can get more items. This is more like a snowball type of trait. You don't really want to play that and trying to come back, as you will simply not have enough resources to come back. This is why I would play this comp, for instance, with the Golden Ox emblem that allows you to have 6 Golden Ox fast. You can have more items, to have more carries stuffed and snowball from there, and have lucky gloves and a lot of powerful combat augments. Now let's talk about Street Demon. So Street Demon is a trait that paints a lot of hexes on your board, and whenever you put a unit on it, it gets a lot of stats. And if you put a unit on the signature hex, which is a little bit more pink, then it will get even more stats. And if that unit is a Street Demon, then you would double even more those stats. So basically, if you have a lot of Street Demon, especially if you have an emblem that I would recommend to play, without the emblem I think this comp is not that strong, then you can have full team that has tons of stats and is difficult to kill. So the main carry you want to play in this comp is obviously Brand, as it is the main 4-cost carry of this comp and goes well with Zyra, who both share exactly the same traits. For the front line, you want to play Echo and Nico. Of course, these two units also share the same trait. And to cap your very late game board, you will want to have Zac, the Street Demon emblem, so he will get a lot of tankiness. And obviously you will want to have Garen, who will hopefully for you fastly give you a Street Demon mod, and you can give that to Garen so he can get even more stats. I would really suggest not to play this comp without the Street Demon emblem, because I think that this comp is not strong enough by itself without the emblem. If you don't have the emblem, you can play with Techie if you really want to play Brand. It's kind of similar. It's just like instead of going with the full Street Demon unit, you will just play full Techie unit. This Brand will deal much more damage. He will actually be more bursty, but on the other hand, you will have less tanky frontline at the same time. So obviously, if you want to play this comp, you will really want to have Street Demon emblem, or if you want to play with the Techie comp, you will want to have a tanky emblem. Stuff like Blazing Soul Coronation is really nice. It gives you one more space for your team, and that's exactly what you want. Anil Squad. Now, this is another vertical that you would prefer to play with an emblem if possible. And this time your main carry is going to be Xayah and your main tanks are going to be Leona and Sejuani. So if you have an emblem, you have the luxury to play 7 Anima Squad, 2 AMP, 2 Dynamo, 3 Exotex, Vanguard and stuff. If you play a lot of Anima Squad, you will see that you will get a lot of some kind of power weapons, and you already has the choice between 2 different weapons. The thing that you need to remember is like they don't matter that much. You will mostly pay attention to the type of damage these weapons do. If you have a lot of AD, such as Xayah, you will most likely do, and you should actually make AD Shred with Evil Shroud or Last Whisper. If that's the case, then you will want to have a weapon, an Anima Squad weapon, that deals physical damage, as it will benefit from the armor shred of your team. On the other hand, this is not the case for this comp, but if you play, for instance, something around Yuumi and Aurora, you will rather try to play with AP Shred, so you will try to get magical weapon. So here, in this case, we play Xayah, so we will look for a lot of AD damage. And this is the stuff you want to Xayah. You can remove the Giant Slayer for Shojin because she's more like burst type kind of carry. She's not AD auto attacker carry just like Aphelios, for instance. And of course, you will want to have a lot of tankiness in the front line. If you don't have an emblem, then I would say I suggest you not to play this comp, but you can still play it. And instead of having Naafiri, for instance, that gives a lot of good traits, you will play Vayne just to have the 7 Anima Squad, but you will lose Exotech, you will lose AMP, so you won't have enough items on Sejuani, for instance. If you play this comp, you will want to try to play with augments such as Anima Squad Crown, Binary Airdrop, because you have a lot of units to stuff, so having less items to fully stuff everyone is better, calculated enhancement and stuff like that. Then we have Zeri Bastion. This was very strong in the PB. It got nerfed, so there's a potential chance that this comp won't be as strong as it was when it goes live. But anyway, I think it's still worth mentioning because I think this comp is pretty easy to play, and I think many beginners will love this comp as it is very straightforward. So the way you want to play this comp is, let's say that you have a Bastion emblem, you want to play 6 Bastion as it gives a lot of tankiness, and you will give all the time Zeri needs to scale the fight. She'll go with Ginzu, she will go with Hextech Gunblade, and with, for instance, a good Exotech item on her. If she doesn't have a good Exotech item and something can go on Sejuani, instead you will look for double Ginzu plus Gunblade. The Gunblade is really nice as it helps to heal the front line, it has a lot of resistances, so this is exactly what you're looking for. If you don't have an emblem, then maybe you will not play 6 Bastion, even though 6 Bastion is really nice. It's just like maybe you can play 4 Bastion and you can cap your board very high with a lot of 5-cost units such as Garen, Renekton, Zac, and Urgot. Again, the idea is like you play this version only in the very late game to win, but until you reach that part, you will play 6 Bastion and Zeri. That's pretty much it, 6 Bastion, Zeri, and Rapid Fire, and that's all you need. If you play this comp, Anger Issues is probably the most broken thing you want to have, but Bastion Crown, of course, it helps you to have 6 Bastion easily, Glass Cannon as it gives damage to your Zeri, and pumping up and stuff like that to give a lot of attack speed, so have Zeri with a lot of damage. You can also play this comp with Bastion Aphelios. It's very similar, the only difference is like you play Aphelios instead of Zeri, and you will put relevant synergies such as Marksman and Golden Ox and stuff like that. Honestly, the gameplay is quite similar, the augments are quite similar, the items are quite similar. The only difference is like during PB, Zeri was much better than Aphelios, but who knows, maybe in the future they will nerf Zeri to the ground and will buff Aphelios, and this version is going to become better than Zeri. So that's why I thought it was worth mentioning as one of the potential comp that you want to play to get started on TFT on set 14. The augments are quite similar, like honestly, like everything is the same except the fact that you play Aphelios instead of Zeri. Earlier I showed you how to play Golden Ox with Annie and Aphelios, then I showed you how to play Aphelios main carry, and now I'm going to show how to play Annie main carry. So if you want to play only Annie and use her full potential, you would rather play around strategists and AMP because these go well together thanks to Yumi, who kind of make the link between everyone. So when you play with strategies, you will want to have Nico, Echo, and Samira because she's an AMP, and then you have all the AMP late game units with Samira, Annie, and Yumi. You will also, of course, aim for late game 5-cost units such as Zac, Garen, and Viego, and hopefully Garen will give you strategies quite early as it will help you to have a strong Zac who can also be the main tank in the very late game. But before achieving this comp, which is quite expensive and quite difficult to achieve because it is very late game, you will want to stabilize your board at level 8 with 3 strategists and 4 Vanguard. This is a cheaper version of the comp that will be achievable quite, let's say, not easily, but like normally achievable as stage 4. So you can prepare your stage 5 and stage 6 with the later comp that I just showed you. If you want to play this comp, you will look for augments such as 1 buff, 2 buff that gives red buff, blue buff, and a champion duplicator. This is kind of broken. Blue battery, axiom arc, this kind of stuff that gives a lot of mana to Annie. And you will also look for stuff like coronation, allows you to have 1 more unit on the comp. Bulky, blazing soul, these are very strong combat augments that will amplify the potential of your main carry. Speaking of strategies, there's one strategist focus that you really want to try definitely. It's Ziggs with Cyberboss and strategist. So one of the things with Cyberboss, it's extremely important to splash in and also to get into a very, let's say, 4 pieces of Cyberboss because it gives more damage to Ziggs. You will see the difference between Ziggs without Cyberboss and Ziggs with the Cyberboss. His AoE is much bigger with Cyberboss, and you can even snipe the backlane carry of your opponents thanks to that. And on the other hand, Ziggs is a strategist, so he will get more benefits from the trait. He can deal a lot more damage thanks to that. So if you want to play this comp, you will have a very strong mid game because you will look for very late game units such as Renekton, Kobuko, and Samira. But before achieving this comp, you will have to stabilize your board at level 8 as stage 4, and in that case you will play this version that I'm showing here. You will play this around stage 4 with only 4 cost units. Let's say you were not lucky, you didn't find a 5 cost unit, so you will just play with that, with 2 Cyberboss, 4 strategists, and you splash in a lot of good traits such as Leona and Sylas for Anima Squad and Vanguard. Then you have a Street Demon with Zyra, with Teki and stuff like that. So very cheap, but quite efficient before you reach the very late game with your 5 cost units. Now let's start with the hero augments. So hero augments are augments that allow some heroes, some units to completely change their spell, and usually they like to take tank type of unit who can become carries. And we're going to start with adaptive strikes for Jax. So with adaptive strikes, Jax will have a stacking attack speed, and his attacks will deal more bonus magic damage. So the part about that is like the more attacks he deals, basically it's kind of one cost, a Twisted Fate, but without any range. So one thing you really want to play with this augment is the Scoped Holobow from the Exotech item. So why this is so important is simply because whenever Jax will critically strike, he will get more mana. If he gets more mana, he will cast more often. He casts more often, he will get more attack speed, so he will attack more, so he get more mana. Basically, you understand, it kind of enters Jax into a loop that's extremely powerful. And whenever he casts the ability, he gains 100% critical strike chance for 8 seconds, meaning that every time he attacks, he gets more mana. So basically, he goes infinite. That's the idea behind this item and this build. So of course, since he's a melee champion, you will want to have sustain, and what's better than Hand of Justice in order to have more crit chance and Omnivamp? I don't think there's many. Of course, you don't need to have double Hush. You can have Hush plus BT, you can have Hush plus QSS so he doesn't get CC'd, but you understand the concept. Then you will reroll at level 5 Poppy and Jax because both are Bastion 1 cost. And once you have them, you will push your level, you add 6 Bastion, and you will feed Poppy to the Renekton because she's a 3-star, so she has a lot of AD and HP, so Renekton will get much more stats. Of course, if you want to play this comp, you need to have adaptive strikes. If you don't have it, don't even try because this is not going to work, right? But except from that, you will look for very powerful augments such as Bastion Circlet. You can also have Anger Issue. You can have Crown Guarded. I think this is not that bad, but I don't know. I have to try. Gargantuan Resolve, in my opinion, is broken. Health is Wealth to get more Omnivamp. Radiant Refractor to have something like Hand of Justice Radiant and stuff like that. Now let's talk about Seize and Desist, which is the Vi hero augment. Basically, it allows Vi's to have more attack speed, and her spell, instead of just attacking one unit in front of her, will make Vi dash to the farthest target and stuns and deal physical bonus damage. So basically, she's going to snipe the backline carries, and you will want to one-shot them with a very offensive build such as Titan, Infinity Age, and Hush. Of course, you're going to play with Vanguard since she's a Vanguard to give her a lot more tankiness, and you will reroll Sylas next to her because it's also a 1-cost Vanguard unit who is going to be here to tank a little bit. So you will reroll both units at level 5, and once you have them, then you can also add a 3 Cypher as a way to lose in the early game and get more resources around stage 3 when you cash out. You don't need to cash out at level at stage 4. I think cashing out at stage 3-3 or 3-7 is good enough to get a little bit more resources. And then later you will play Zed as the next Cypher, because one good synergy Zed has with Vi, with Seize and Desist, is that Zed has the capacity also to target the furthest unit. So basically you have Vi and Zed who will literally get into the same unit in the backline, destroy it, and then job is done. You won the fight. For the augments, of course, you need to have Seize and Desist, otherwise it doesn't work. Mace as well, because you have a lot of crit build in this comp, so having more gloves is nice. More Vanguard, Gargantuan, Health is Wealth, and stuff like that is really, really nice, of course. The next hero augment I want to talk about today is Button Mash, which is the hero augment of Poppy. So instead of having Poppy who will throw her shield to the furthest enemy, she will instead attack 3 times with Hammer in front of her. So a bit of difference between set 9, if you remember, and if you played this set compared to this set, is that in set 9 Poppy was dealing physical damage. In this set she's dealing magical damage, so her build is going to be a little bit different, and you're going to play her with more like AP offensive and crit items such as Jewel Gauntlet, Hush, and potentially Rabadon as a 3rd item, can be BT, can be Crown Guard, it's a little bit more flexible, but I think Jewel Gauntlet and the Hand of Justice are kind of mandatory. So very similar to Jax, you're going to play with a lot of Bastion, you're going to reroll Jax and Poppy at level 5, and you are going to sacrifice your Jax 3 to feed Renekton in the very late game, so Renekton can gain a lot of stats and become a real monster next to Poppy. In here, however, you're going to focus as well on playing Cyberboss, because Cyberboss allows Poppy to deal damage in AoEs, so she's not targeting only one unit with her spell, she's going to target multiple units, and she's going to get a lot of powerful stats, more HP, more AP. That's basically everything she needs because she's already in 4 bastions, so she already has a lot of defensive stats. Just like for Jax, you're going to play with more or less the same augments. One thing to notice though is Axiom Arc. I think this is actually really powerful on Poppy. She can one-shot targets very fast in the beginning of the fights, and then she can snowball the fights thanks to the mana she gets from killing units. Now let's talk about Sylas, the other Vanguard 1-cost unit who gets a hero augment. We saw earlier how to play Vi, now it's Sylas. Basically, Sylas is going to deal more damage with his ability, and what's really interesting is that he is going to recast on kill. So he can definitely snowball a fight and make the tides change from the first second. However, you have to position yourself properly to make sure that Sylas is not targeting the strongest tank at the start of the fight, but rather an off tank or someone who doesn't have a lot of defensive items, so he can kill easily and recast again and again and again. So just like earlier, you're going to play 6 Vanguards, you're going to reroll Vi and Sylas. Vi is going to be your main tank next to Sylas, who is going to be very, very offensive, kind of similarly to the build with Poppy. He's going to have Jiru Gauntlet, Hoj, and Rabadon. And behind, he needs to have a late game carry, and it's going to be Aurora. Until you find Aurora, you can play, for instance, Elise, who is an excellent also Dynamo carry. But let's say that in the very late game, Aurora just makes more sense as she gives Anima Squad, and also she's very, very strong as she can bring a new unit to the bench. For the augments, I would say that very similarly to Poppy, once again, of course you don't want Bastion emblems, you prefer to have Vanguard if possible. And Axiomark is even better as, you know, we have a reset mechanic when Sylas kills, so if he can get even more mana when he kills, it's even better. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Alright, now let's talk about Rast. So his hero augment is Alter Ego, that basically transforms Rast into the... I forgot the name of the Shadow Assassin form. But anyway, yeah, that's the other form of Kayn in League of Legends. And it allows Rast to transform himself into a Beyblade, I would say. Basically, he will like dash and spin around him and deal damage around him. And if he kills someone, he will dash and spin again. So if he kills every time he dashes, it really becomes a Beyblade. But anyway, the build you want to have is to play with 7 Divini Corp. As you remember, Divini Corp gives a lot of stats to everyone, but it gives even more stats to the Divini Corps themselves. So you really want to play with 7. The only way to achieve 7 is to have a Divini Corp emblem, so try to get that if you can. And you can play with Graves as your secondary carry. Both units work well together, they will target the same unit and they will obliterate them in a few seconds. Of course, you reroll at level 6 because this is a 2-cost reroll comp, and that's why also Graves make even more sense as you can reroll for Graves at the same time. For the augments, of course, you need to have Alter Ego, otherwise it doesn't work. You need to have something like Combat Augment, I think. And this is especially important for every melee champions who can carry. So, for instance, Rast, earlier we talked about Poppy, Sylas, etc. It's really important to have relevant Combat Augment because these units are literally stat checks units. If you don't have enough stats, they're going to be useless. If you have a lot of stats, they're going to destroy the fights. So you want to have more stats with Combat Augment, Healthy Swells, Bulky Bodies, or more items such as Portable Ford that give a lot of stats. That's pretty much what you're looking for. And now the Chuck Bug. So the Chuck Bug is the Gragas hero augment. I think this is probably one of the funniest to play. You have 2 augments you can get, one at 3-2. They are a little bit different, but the effect is the same. The only difference is that you get more Gragas if you pick it at 3-2. The way you want to play this comp, since Gragas is a 3-cost unit, you really want to play around 3-cost units. I give you a variation here with Yuumi as a side carry. So Gragas has the ability to push his unit in front of him. It's not that important. I think that's the funny part, but the most important part is like whenever he casts, he empowers his next auto attack, and that actually hurts quite a lot. So the way you want to play him is with 6 Bruiser. You want to make him as tanky as possible, but also you want to make sure he deals a lot of damage. So when you have 6 Bruisers, he has a lot of health. Thanks to Titan, when he's stacked, he will get a lot of resistances, so it's great. And he has Bloodthirster that gives a shield based on his max health, so he has a lot of shield as well. Honestly, this is really difficult to kill. And then since it's difficult to kill, the fights are going to be long, then you want to Archangel Staff to Gragas so he can get more and more AP and become a real monster at the end of every fight. Next to him, you have Mordekaiser, who is going to be your main tank. You're going to put utility stuff like Ionic Sparks and Fire Redemption, really, really important. And finally, for your backline carry, you have Yuumi here with the blue buff. Like you saw how to play Yuumi earlier. This is basically the same stuff you want to give her. So you will reroll at level 7 with Gragas, Mordekaiser, and Yuumi. So basically you have 6 Bruisers and 1 Divini Corp, and that's it. You reroll that, and then later, only later you start to put some interesting units such as Annie, Ziggs, and obviously Kobuko, because that's the best bruiser in the game. So this is a 3-cost reroll comp. You will want to try to look for Hiri Grab Bag, Gargantuan Resolve, stuff like that, a Rig Chop. But on the other hand, you also have very strong, powerful combat augments such as Trifecta. Since you play a lot of 3-cost, this is perfect. And Reinforcer Skeleture that gives more health to your bruisers whenever they die. And since you play a reroll comp, there's a high chance that many of your bruisers will die often. And at the end of the game, they will have like thousands and thousands of HP. That's going to be way too difficult to kill for most comps in front of you. Alright, so we've gone through the 30 comps. Obviously, you might have realized that there are some other comps I didn't mention yet. It's simply because, like, I think 30 comps is already long enough for a video. I didn't want to make a video that lasted a whole week, you know. But anyway, if you're really curious to know what's going to be the strongest in the meta, of course, I'm going to update the spreadsheet that I've been showing in this video many times. This way, you can just bookmark it and come back to this spreadsheet whenever you want to know what are the strongest comp. I'm going to produce tier lists when we are getting closer to the release of the set, and after every patch I'm going to update it. So if you really want to know what's going to be the best comp whenever there's a new patch, you can always come back to the spreadsheet because I'm going to maintain it. I hope that among these comps you manage to find a few ones that really makes you want to play and play again TFT, and tell me what's your favorite comp in the comment. I'm really curious to see. Until then, see you in the next video.